My childhood best friend had been impersonating me online for 3 years, using my photos, my name, my professional portfolio, and she stole a career opportunity that would have changed my life. But she didn't know I worked in cybersecurity and could trace every move she had made since day one. There are things you cannot prepare yourself to discover, not because they're too painful, though they are, but because they are too implausible. Because when you discover them, the first reaction is not rage or grief, but something closer to the deep confusion of someone who has just seen something their brain refuses to process as real. What I discovered on a Tuesday in February was that someone had been living a version of my life on the internet for 3 years. With my photos, with my name, with my professional history, with my achievements. And that someone was not a stranger. She was the person who had taught me to ride a bike when we were 8 years old. My name is Sophia. I am 33 years old. I am a cybersecurity and digital intelligence specialist. I work for a firm that provides services to mid-sized and large companies, and I spend most of my days tracing behavioral patterns in digital environments, identifying vulnerabilities, and reconstructing what people did online even when they believe they deleted it. It is a job that makes you very aware of something most people ignore, that in the digital environment, almost nothing truly disappears. Every action leaves a trace. Every account has a history. Every device has an address. And someone who knows where to look can reconstruct years of activity with a precision that sometimes surprises even those of us who do it. That skill, which I built over 8 years of career, was what allowed me to discover what had happened. And it was what made the person who did it understand that she had made the mistake of doing it to someone who knew exactly how to find the truth. Andrea and I met in first grade. We were 6 years old and were seated together because our last names started with letters close together in the alphabet. That bureaucratic coincidence became 27 years of friendship, or what I believed was friendship throughout all those years. Andrea was brilliant, creative, with a magnetic personality that made people gravitate toward her naturally. She was also someone who needed external validation in a way I always recognized, but never gave too much importance to, because I loved her and because everyone has their things. When we finished university, our careers took different directions. I entered the world of technology and digital security. Andrea studied graphic design and communications, worked at some agencies, had independent projects that started with enthusiasm and faded before consolidating. We stayed close. We saw each other every 2 or 3 weeks. We told each other things, or so I believed. What I didn't know was that Andrea had been watching my career for a while with something more than a friend's interest. The discovery came in a way I could not have planned even if I had tried. I was at a cybersecurity conference in another city. During the coffee break, a woman approached me with an expression of genuine recognition and told me she had followed my work for years, that she had read all my articles, that she had made professional decisions based on analyses I had published. I thanked her. I asked her where she had seen my work because at that point, I had a relatively low professional profile, published occasionally in specialized forums, but was not a public figure in any way. She told me the name of a professional platform. She told me the name of the profile. She described the type of content that was published regularly. Nothing she described matched what I remembered having published. I asked her to show me the profile on her phone. What I saw left me speechless for what must have been 10 or 15 seconds that probably felt eternal to her. It was a profile with my full name. With my profile photo, a photo I remembered posting on my personal social media 3 years earlier. With a professional description that mixed real information about my academic background with projects and achievements I did not recognize as mine. With articles published under my name that I had never written. With a professional network of hundreds of people I did not know. Someone had been spending 3 years building a professional version of me that I did not know existed. I went back to my hotel room that night with a mental clarity I recognize as the state I enter when I have a technical problem to solve. It is a kind of functional coldness. The emotions don't disappear, but move to the background while the brain works. I started investigating the profile with the tools I have routinely available in my work. The IP address from which the account had been created was from my city. The device from which content was most frequently posted had technical characteristics I could cross-reference with other databases. The posting patterns, the times, the frequency, the way the content was written, all of it had digital fingerprints that for someone trained to read them were as identifiable as a handwritten signature. It took me 4 hours to have enough information to know that the profile was operated from a device registered in Andrea's name. I sat staring at the screen for hours of technical work, and at the end of the road was the name of the person who had taught me to ride a bike when we were 8 years old. What followed were 2 weeks of systematic investigation that I will do my best to describe without getting into technical details that aren't relevant here. I built a complete timeline of the fake profile's activity. 3 years of posts, interactions, messages, professional connections. I documented every action with its date, time, origin address, and device fingerprint. What I found, as the timeline filled in, was more serious than I had initially imagined. The fake profile was not just a parallel identity built out of vanity or some kind of fantasy I might have tried to understand. It was an active tool. It had been used to apply for freelance projects in my name, to network with people in my industry presenting itself as me, to build a professional reputation that, in several cases, had generated real opportunities. And there was something else, something that when I discovered it made me feel a rage that physically cost me effort to manage. 18 months earlier, a major technology sector company had contacted the fake profile to offer a long-term consulting project. A project that, based on the characteristics I was able to reconstruct from the conversations, was exactly the type of work I had been seeking for years. The type of client, the type of scope, the type of compensation that would have represented a real leap in my career. Andrea, impersonating me, had responded to that contact. She had had conversations. She had negotiated. And at some point in the process, when the situation required an identity verification she could not pass, the project had fallen through. It had never reached me because no one knew it was supposed to reach me. The company believed I had responded and that the negotiation had failed for reasons on my end. That opportunity, that specific project that could have changed the trajectory of my career, had been intercepted and destroyed by someone using my name. I called my attorney. I explained everything. I sent her the complete documentation that same night. She listened in silence for 20 minutes. When I finished, she told me that what had happened to me had legal names in several codes: digital identity theft, financial damage arising from demonstrable loss of professional opportunities, and depending on whether economic transactions have been completed under my name, potentially fraud. She asked me how I wanted to proceed. I told her I wanted 2 things. First, for Andrea to fully understand what she had done and the legal consequences that could follow. Second, for the company that had contacted the fake profile to know what had happened and have the opportunity to reconnect with me, the real person. I did not want to destroy Andrea, but I also could not act as if what had happened had not happened. The conversation with Andrea was the strangest of my life. I asked her to meet me at a cafe. She arrived not knowing what I wanted to talk about. She saw my face when I sat across from her, and something in her expression changed immediately. The kind of change you cannot fake because it happens before the brain has time to prepare a response. I showed her the documentation on my laptop. I said nothing while she reviewed it. I let her read. I let her see the timeline. I let her arrive on her own at the end of what I had reconstructed. When she looked up, she did not say it hadn't been her. She did not say there was a mistake. She also said nothing for a very long time. What she finally said was, "I didn't expect you to be able to find all of this." It was not a dramatic confession. There was no crying, no pleading, no elaborate explanation. It was that sentence, said quietly, that in a certain way told me more about what had happened than any confession could have. "I didn't expect you to be able to find all of this." She had done it assuming I wouldn't discover it. She had done it calculating she could do it without consequences. Not because she believed it was right, but because she believed it was safe. I explained the legal consequences to her with the same clarity with which I would explain any technical matter to a client. I told her that what she had done had a name in the criminal code, that the documentation I had was sufficient for a formal complaint, that there were demonstrable financial damages, that the process could be long and public if it reached formal channels. I also told her what I wanted from her instead of that process. I wanted the fake profile permanently and immediately deleted. I wanted a formal letter, written in her own hand and signed, acknowledging what she had done, which I would keep as protection but would not publish if she complied with what was agreed. And I wanted her to give me access to all the communication she had conducted under my name, so I could assess the complete extent of the damage. Andrea agreed to everything, not because she was generous, but because she understood that her options were those or something significantly worse. With the information from the conversations Andrea had conducted under my name, I was able to reconstruct the list of professional contacts who had interacted with the fake profile, believing it was me. I contacted each one of them. I explained what had happened with enough documentation for it to be credible. I offered to verify my real identity by any means they considered appropriate. Most responded with a combination of surprise and willingness to reconnect with a real person. The company that had contacted the fake profile 18 months earlier and whose project had been intercepted and destroyed responded in less than 24 hours. The director who had initiated the original contact read my email, verified my identity, and asked for a call that same week. That call led to a formal proposal. That proposal became the most important project of my career to date. 8 months have passed. The project with that company is still active and has generated 2 additional contracts through referrals. My real professional profile, the one I built myself after all of this with much more care and with robust identity verifications, has a presence that the fake profile could never have sustained long-term because it was built on an identity that was not hers. With Andrea, I have no contact. There was no big fight, no cinematic closing moment. Just the gradual silence of 2 people who no longer have anything to say to each other. Sometimes I think about the 27 years, about the 6-year-old girl I was seated next to in 1st grade, about all the versions of that friendship that were real before something in Andrea decided that my identity was a resource she could use. I don't fully understand why she did it. I have theories, but not certainties. And at some point, I had to accept that not fully understanding it doesn't prevent me from moving forward. What I do understand is this. In the digital world, your identity is as much yours as your name. And there are ways to protect it, to monitor it, to know when someone is using it without your permission. It doesn't require being an expert in cybersecurity. It requires knowing what to look for and developing the habit of looking. Search your name on professional platforms you don't use. Search your photo in reverse image search engines. Set up alerts that notify you when your name appears on the internet. Because what happened to me can happen to anyone. The difference is that I knew how to find it. If this story made your blood run cold, comment. Would you search your name right now? Like if you believe your digital identity deserves protection. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who doesn't know their identity might be being used without their knowledge. Practical tip. Search your full name on Google right now. Search your photos on Google Images using reverse search. Check whether profiles with your name exist on platforms you didn't create. Your digital identity is yours, and you can and should protect it.